Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us again on the NCHC podcast. My name is Paul Gilmore, and I have the pleasure of being joined by two fellow Houstonians. Well, their programs here in Houston, the Houston Raiders, and that is going to be Jacob May and John Hervey. And they're joining us today to talk about the Raiders program and some things that they had going on this summer. Looking forward to this upcoming year as well. So, John, Jacob, how are you guys doing today?
Doing
Doing
pretty good. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you guys for being on, and thank you for joining us on the NCHC podcast. So, if you guys are not aware, we've been doing some of these podcasts throughout this year, kind of leading into this upcoming season. But this is the first time that we've done the podcast where we took a fan vote to see who the people wanted to hear from. And you guys were the first names and the most frequent names that we got feedback from that people wanted to hear from. So, my question is, how does it feel to be voted as the top players that people wanted to hear from?
Feels good. It feels like an honor to know that people wanted us on this.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. Same.
So when you got that feedback, because I think I was in contact with your dad about the podcast. What was that first reaction whenever you heard, "Hey, we want to get you guys on the podcast"?
He's like, oh, you have a podcast. So I was like, oh, cool with who? And he's like, oh, with the homeschool. I was like, oh, really? So I was like surprised. And then I was excited. And I heard John was going to be on it. So I'm even more excited, a fellow teammate. So yeah.
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 So we.
Same.
Sorry. Go ahead, John.
No, I was just saying. Yeah. Same. Like I didn't even know that was popular request till we looked at the notes. So.
Yeah, so we've been going through and we've been interviewing players across all of the different programs on the boys and girls side, and we decided, why don't we just take a look at who people actually want to hear from? It's one thing to hear from certain players, and we've gotten good positive feedback from that, but to have you guys on as well, the first time we've done like a fan vote, so to speak, and so you guys were voted in, and that means the people want to hear from you. So we'll go ahead and continue so that the people can hear from you. And I wanted to take a second and talk about the Houston Raiders as an organization. So last year, if I'm not mistaken, was that the first year that you guys were a program? Was last year?
Yeah, it was.
Okay. And so I was going to say, I remember it's relatively new. I wasn't sure if it was last year was the first year or this one. So you're heading into the second year overall for the program. And a lot of the times when you have a new program, and I know that you guys also had kind of a smaller varsity team last year. You were carrying what, like six guys on the varsity squad?
Six, but for nationals, we had five.
Yeah. So you go into that national tournament and you have no bench players. You're playing the full, 48 minutes every game. But going into that second year, how do you go about, with a newer program, establishing a culture and a reputation for the program? Like, what are the Raiders doing to try to establish those kind of things?
Um. Just playing like faith based, like trying our best to represent God. Because as a new program, you get eyes on you and you get people that are like, what are these guys about? And if we show God, then it just makes it better for everybody.
Yeah, Jacob, did you want to add to that? Or?
Yeah, well, basically what he said, and I feel like since we played with five in nationals, like we only lost one game, that kind of helped us. People wanting looking at our program, thinking about joining or just getting more eyes on us.
And I was going to say, when you were at nationals, and I remember, I believe the first time that I had heard about the Raiders was at the district tournament, and then of course you guys went to regionals and nationals. And I think you're exactly right. The first thing people think of is they see that shirt or that jersey that says Houston Raiders, and they're like, I wonder who these guys are, what they're about. So, John, I appreciated your answer about making sure that it's faith based, that the program is representing the Lord, because that's one of the things that homeschool basketball is about, is that faith plus basketball and doing things the right way and representing. So I think that was a great response. And I saw when I was going back through some of the work that you guys put in last year, you had mentioned, Jacob, that you guys lost the one game, and then you guys competed in Division 3 at the past nationals for the Silver Ball championship. So going in last year, new program, having that nationals experience and playing with five guys, what would you say that you learned from, not even just nationals, but the whole season, the whole experience?
To really just trust your teammates. Don't settle. Like if you're up a certain amount, don't just take your foot off the gas. Keep going. Play as hard as you can, and then in the end, everything's in God's hands. So you just got to trust the work you put in.
I think I just learned that our team is really capable of playing. Especially with only five guys. Um, it was just good to see that we can compete at a level like that.
And so I'll ask a follow up. I know that we're kind of in the beginning parts of the season. Um, I know this wasn't necessarily something that I had maybe prepped you guys for, but what is the varsity kind of shaping up like this year? Are you looking at having a little bit more of a bench, or is it kind of similar experience as last year, where it's a little bit of a smaller squad?
Um, I mean, we're looking at a bigger team. We got a few more players, but that's all I'm really gonna say right now. We'll
Okay,
see. These guys
all
are
right.
good.
Yeah, I think you got like a solid 7, maybe 8. Just see how things pan out.
Okay, and I again I understand it's still kind of early on in the season. Things are always subject to change, especially when you start looking at actually competing and going to these tournaments and games. So Jacob, I'll ask you a specific question, and I recently saw on well I say Twitter, I think it's X now, but I saw on social media that there was a picture of you with Shaquille O'Neal. Like you're
Yeah.
literally standing next to Shaq, and you got a picture with Shaq. So how did that come about, and what was that whole experience like with Shaquille O'Neal?
So I was shooting at Shoot 360, and then just a normal day shooting. Then out of nowhere, I see someone like super tall walk in. I'm on the furthest court from like the entrance, so I could barely see him. And then as soon as he starts walking closer, I'm like, oh, that's Shaq. So then I keep shooting, just wait a little bit until he wasn't busy, and then got a picture with him. And he was funny. Like when he was shooting on one of the courts with other people, just like cracking jokes the whole time. It was funny and nice.
So was it the kind of situation where, I mean, I know you got the photo, but was there anything like, were you like, hey, can you sign this, or was there any thing that he told you specifically? Did y'all talk hoops, or was it just kind of a quick interaction?
It was a quick interaction, and I had a Warriors like shirt on, so I didn't want to ask him like to sign the shirt. That's not even the team he played for. So
Sure. Yeah. Okay. It would have been. I would have been interested to see what he would have said had you asked him to sign a Warriors jersey. I'm sure he
yeah,
would have had some kind of funny comeback or something. But yeah, that seems like a really cool experience. And John, I'll ask you about your summer. I learned that you had an opportunity to travel to Indonesia, and there's hopes that in the future, or maybe in the very near future, that you actually would play for the Indonesian national team. And so, if you wouldn't mind just kind of telling me, what does it mean to play for and represent an entire country?
Um, Honestly, like it sounds like a really big thing, but it's it's far away right now for me, so I don't really have any pressure about it. But it would honestly be an amazing thing to just represent your nation. That's like a one in a lifetime opportunity.
So, if I can ask, what is it like the actual hoops enthusiasm in Indonesia? Is that something that's really big over there, or when you went over there, what was kind of your take on the Indonesian basketball?
So from my understanding, it used to be more of a middle class and above sport, and it's now starting to get to just everybody. So you can see, you know, people developing. You can see people like in the gym every day. So I think it's a great environment, especially for me, and I think a lot of people just want to get better over there.
So, what would that process look like if you don't mind me asking, within the next several years? Like, how does someone become a part of playing for their national team?
I'm not actually 100% sure, but I know since I was born here, I have to get a passport to that country because I have heritage there. And then probably play over there for a little bit so that all the coaches are used to me. And then, uh, yeah, I'll probably get an invite eventually by Olympics or World Cup or something like that. That'll probably be how it goes.
And I think it's interesting that you mentioned about the kind of classism of it all, especially the FIBA World Cup just happened, and you think about basketball as a whole and globally, it is a very grassroots kind of sport, and so it's kind of cool to hear about that change happening in Indonesia and it becoming more accessible to people over there as well. So certainly hope that you get that opportunity, and I'll be interested to kind of follow that and see what that looks like for you as well. So next question I have is that you guys, especially Jacob, I know I've seen on your social media, and I think John, you as well. There's a lot of videos that you post in the gym, right? Working hard, training, spending time in the lab, just kind of working on your craft. So, what advice would you give for other homeschool athletes, right, that are thinking of playing at the next level or thinking about improving their game while they're still in high school? What kind of advice would you give to other homeschool athletes?
I would say to just keep going to the gym, working, like on not just a certain thing, work on every aspect of the game, work on getting stronger, faster, like little things. So if you work on the little things, like a lot of little things, they eventually aren't little anymore because you're working on it so well, and then they become bigger aspects of your game, just reps.
Yeah, it's uh, developing everything and working on your weaknesses is definitely a big thing. And for like playing at the next level, just always take that next step. Just always be trying to prove yourself.
So I saw that you guys also recently on social media there was a post that was done of some of the top class of 2025 basketball players in the Houston area, and you, John, and Jacob, and I believe one of your teammates, Carter. I think all three of
Yeah,
y'all were on the top 100 in the Houston area. So again, just kind of curious, what does that mean for you guys and heading into the season? What do you think about when you think about being on a list like that of some of the top basketball athletes in the Houston area?
Um, Personally, like it's a cool thing, but it's not really something I think about. Um, I think rankings are great, but it's just not something I really pay attention to. So I'm just really focusing on the season.
yeah, I agree with him. I think like it's great to be ranked, but like just because you're ranked doesn't mean you're better than everyone else. You got to work, do everything the same as people that aren't ranked. It's really just a number if you think about it.
And John, I'm glad you mentioned that focus and that commitment to the upcoming season because as we're kind of finishing up and wrapping up our interview, I wanted to ask you, coming off that season you guys had last year, where it's kind of first dipping the toes into the water as an organization, as a program, heading into this upcoming season where you guys are both juniors, continuing to develop your game. What would be some of the goals that you would set for the Raiders, and like what can we expect from you guys?
Um, Going for the gold ball. I think that's really our main goal. We almost got there, in Division 3, and we barely missed out. So I think that's something we're looking for next season. But otherwise, you're just gonna have to see.
Jacob, any closing thoughts for Raiders this upcoming
Yeah,
season?
I'd say the same thing. Gold ball. Try to win it every game we could. Do the best we can, and just trust God. Everything else that we can't control.
Well, Jacob, John, I want to say that I appreciate you guys' commitment to your faith. I appreciate your humility. Every question that was directed towards you, whether it was rankings or anything like that, you kind of focused it back to your team and to your upcoming season. And I think that says a lot about you guys, and I think it says a lot about your organization. So I want to thank you guys for joining me on today's podcast. Looking forward to seeing you guys at district, at regionals, at nationals, and I wish you guys all the best in your upcoming season.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thanks for having us.